So I get the honour of taking you guys into lunch with probably not such a palatable topic, but it's a great honour to have the opportunity to speak to you. The theme that you have of working together is very much at the core of the work that my team does. And the case I'm going to specifically talk to you about today highlights that need for cooperation. So as you just heard, I spent the majority of my today. I was a geek back in the 90s, did my first web page in 95. So I've seen it from IRC bulletin boards through to what we're dealing with now. But I do need to emphasise that this presentation is specific to child sex offenders. The content will, whilst it has been heavily edited, it is disturbing. You will see images. I'm going to ask you to read some text. It's not used gratuitously, but it's probably more specifically used to provide context to the threat that this particular network posed. So where I work, I'm with the Queensland Police. I work under the Child Safety and Sexual Crime Group. That umbrella holds the Child Trauma Task Force, mostly that's infant homicide, the Adult Sex Offenders and Serious Sex Offenders Unit, the Child Protection Offender Registry, and Task Force Argos. The areas of the internet that we work in provide you with most of your clients. The one that we're working in specifically at the moment is Tor. We will be moving to close an operation that we're embedded in at the moment within the next couple of weeks, but I can tell you that there's upward of 40,000 members in that child sex offender network that we're currently administering. The case I'm going to talk to you about today is more specifically to bulletin boards, one of the older areas of the internet. This Operation Achilles commenced quite some time ago. Those are the partner agencies. You've got the FBI, the German Federal Police, the CEOP from the United Kingdom, the Toronto Police, Interpol, Europol, all engaged, and at the heart of that was our team with a covert operative infiltrating the network. I'll play a short film clip for you from Lateline that will give you a bit of an overview, and then I'll get into the case and explain what happened.
Well, good evening, welcome to Lateline. I'm Tony Jones. Lateline's been given access to a global police investigation known as Operation Achilles, which has just raided the targeted men are considered by police to be the hardest core of the online pedophile networks. After our exclusive report from Suzanne Smith, we'll be joined live by the Executive Assistant Director of the FBI, Stephen Tinwell, and the key Australian investigator, John Rouse, the head of Task Force Argos.
We have found ourselves now, as this case demonstrates, that we have groups as sophisticated as any other criminal organization that have the wherewithal, that have the means to literally pursue children and to exploit children at a level that has surprised us.
It's not a sickness, it's not an illness, it's not a disease. It is obsessive behavior to exercise your power, will, and control over someone who's helpless. It is subtle, it is secretive, it is seductive, and it is successful.
For years, a network of men scattered across the world had reached what they considered to be the pinnacle of success. Seasoned pedophiles, they believed their sophisticated knowledge of computer encryption youngest children involved in the worst sex acts. Legal documents obtained by Lateline today show just how at ease the men were as they messaged each other, offering pictures.
I have a few 5-year-old Taras that you do not have.
These girls are heavily drugged. The girls are too fucked up to move or resist. 3 girls, the first one being the youngest, around 8 or 9 years old.
Another writes his assessment of the importance of the child sex network.
My thanks to you and all the others that together make this the greatest group of pedos to ever gather in one place. I'm honoured just to be part of it.
But what the men didn't know was that their group was about to be destroyed from within because the world's police had finally caught up with their computer techniques. In the end, it was a group of Queensland police that brought the downfall of the network and cracked the case open for the FBI.
Our capacity to penetrate the network originated in Queensland, and through that portal we were able to get in and we were able to watch how they worked. That's an important part of being able to charge them as an enterprise, to show that they were literally structured in a way that was to conduct a business, and the business was child exploitation.
We'll go back to that chart that he's talking about later on in this presentation, but a template of that legislation is now used in Australia under the Commonwealth legislation, where we can charge these men as a criminal enterprise together for what they do. So the case originated actually in New Zealand. Any of you that may remember going back into around 2004, there was a global investigation that originated from the United States of America called Operation Falcon. You can Google that if you want. It was 727 in Queensland. We arrested 87 men in 6 days across the state. And what we neglected was our cousins in New Zealand, because when the wave of media broke across Australia, obviously it hit New Zealand as well. Over there it was called Operation Tercel, and one of the targets that they arrested was this individual called Bell. When he was arrested, he provided information about a network that he was part of. That information was relayed from New Zealand Customs to the Department of Internal Affairs, John Peacock and his team, who we work closely with, and they had a look at the information that he provided. So to gain membership to this network, you were tested on image recognition. Anything like that is a quote from one of the members of the group, that a true pedo will know all the files in their collection. So what they would do is they would send you an executable file, you'd run it, it would analyse the contents of your hard drive, and it would identify the names of every image and video on your computer. It would send that list back to the administrators of the network, who then in real time would test you on the knowledge of your collection. So for example, what is the name of the series with the 5-year-old girl wearing the pink underwear on the bed? That kind of thing you'd have to answer in real time. Elections. And also to defeat law enforcement, because largely child sex offenders are under the impression that law enforcement cannot exchange child exploitation material. That is very, very true for most of the world, but it's not true in Queensland. We can hack, we can send, we can distribute, we can possess, and we've levelled the playing field to the point where we can stop men abusing children. Security. All of their communications were PGP encrypted. They used firewalls and port scanning, fully encrypted operating systems. I won't get techie on you, but their IPs are masked by proxies and anonymisers so that would wash off their address as they surfed the internet. And they rotated their keys on a regular basis. So for example, if one of them had a new movie file that they had produced, what they would do is utilise a program that they created themselves. It would split the movie into 10 segments. It would then split the first and last segments and swap them around, and then it would glue them back together. Right, so you couldn't run the file for a start. Then they changed the name of the file from .mo another file extension, then they'd encrypt it. So you've got no chance of opening that file unless you understand the methodology and you have the program to swap the files around and re-glue them. So that's what New Zealand passed over to us. Good luck, guys, have fun. And we had a very, very good look at it. We obviously can do things that the DIA, who are a censorship compliance agency, they can't do. So we took the case on, and largely my strategy at that point in time was to intercept the data and the images and movies that they were sharing with a view to trying to stop children being abused. If we can identify where in the world, and you'll see some case studies, that child is, we can get it to a law enforcement agency that will help locate the child. So I put a full-time COVID operative onto it, and we started monitoring all of the communications in the group, and we commenced Operation Achilles, and I'm sure you know why we call it Achilles. Pretty simple one. So in terms of security, some of the communications were like this. They refer to us as LEA, law enforcement agencies. So whilst I think that we're probably not really capable of bringing them down, never be complacent about that. That we think that they are the best child porn ring on the Usenet, and we're responsible for our own security. So some of the things they tossed around were the concept of new nicknames that they would rotate on a monthly basis, and having a theme around that rotation. So in case we were watching them, you would really have to be across their movement to understand what they were doing. So how that kind of looked over some parts of the operation was like this. Here's the original members down on the far left there. Yardbird, original usernames. They would then go to a car theme, so they changed to Thunderbird, Jaguar, Scorpio. Then they went to a cooking theme, Cordon Bleu, short order. So unless you knew who they were as this evolved and you knew what was going on, you didn't know who was talking. And all of this, remember, is also encrypted. The area of the internet that they operated in still exists, news groups. If you just watch the cursor here, you'll just see how many news groups there were at the time that I did this capture, which was quite a long time ago. Any interest that you might have, there is a news group for, okay? It's impossible to police this. Where we normally put our resources is over here, alt binaries erotica teen male, alt binaries pictures erotica teen, where people post pictures. But where these guys were actually operating in is not an area that we would put our resources. And in fact, what they were was areas of the internet where they could recruit new members, because a lot of child sex offenders that are looking to protect themselves online will go into areas like alt binaries PGP, and they'll start asking questions about how to stop law enforcement. And that was one of the recruiting strategies. So any one of you could go onto a news group and you could see a post. This is how it would look. There'd be the title, Angry Salad Spice Your Life, and then there's all the responses from the different members down through here. Once you click on that post, this is what you'd see. Fully PGP encrypted text message. Unless you have the keys, you can't decrypt that, so you don't know what they said. But in that message, it will tell you to go to another area of the news group where you can actually download the videos or images that he's talking about. I would probably argue with you, not really much chance of bringing down a network like this. Very, very sophisticated. They had a white paper that they shared within the group as well about how to set their systems up and how not to get caught. If we did manage to get an open or a clear net IP from one of the offenders and we took our forensics through the door, that's what you'd see. You'd see Windows 7 with a whole lot of adult pornography scattered across the hard drive, and then you'd see a lot of unpartitioned space on the drive. And inside that is a drive encrypted petition with the operating system and all of the child exploitation material. You won't get past that without the keys. The operation that we're running at the moment, we have had to have, whether it was the Netherlands or the Spanish or the FBI, we've had to have them staged outside the offender's door while we are talking to the offender in real time online to have their systems up as the police go through the door. And that's what we've been doing over the last 6 months. It's the only way that you'll be able to get past their encryption. Unless you install a keylogger or perhaps reverse engineer a Trojan to infiltrate their computer between us and them. Now that segue leads you into the words of the leader of this group, Yardbird, and this is his thoughts about the game that we're currently playing. Very stringently, and he protected them for a long time. So some of the things you might be interested in, which I've left in the slides, is this issue of the psychology of the people that we're dealing with. So this is once again Yardbird's words. Well, he was very artistic, and he felt the need to keep his flock entertained. So he put together a video compilation of a very infamous child exploitation series. It's called Baby Shy. It goes for 16 minutes. And at the beginning of the video, he put his symbol, which is the blue wings of Yardbird, crossed with the PGP keys. And then he put a heavy metal soundtrack and spliced all of the Baby Shy video together. That goes to 17 minutes. The other one he did was this one. quite a lot of Australian children in that gallery, which you walk around virtually through his video. I've deleted this next slide so you won't see it, but that image library that you had to have possession of, they maintained that as a collective. So if I hit click and I hadn't deleted the slide, it would run for about 5 minutes with screen grabs of A to Z of every child exploitation material series that we. It would just keep ticking over, and that would be largely quite distressing for you. So for 6 months, we intercepted data, analysed their communications, and we went through a very stringent process of victim identification, and I'll talk about some of those cases a little later on. We identified that the proxies and the anonymising services that they were using to mask their identities were mostly hosted from the United States of America, so we briefed the FBI about the case, and they sent Special Agent Chuck Wilder over, who worked with us for a period of 2 weeks, just to gain an intelligence appreciation of the job, to see if the FBI could actually take the job over. At that point in time, we didn't have any evidence of an Australian offender to work on, but we would have to get affidavits and MLATs through the United States to identify these people, so it made more sense to move the case over to Washington. So unfortunately, Chuck's, which I'll explain how that rolled shortly. So around about that time, when Chuck made that assessment, this happened, and we intercepted, as we did quite regularly, a particular video stream that was shared amongst the offenders. For us, it was called the Daphne and Irina series. In Belgium, Operation Video Child, Europol, Koala, and in the US, it became Operation Joint Hammer, which still stands as probably the biggest investigation the US has ever been involved in. So I'm just going to segue away from Operation Achilles. Just remember that this operation, which effectively, this one interception of a video changed the course of the investigation. So this is the words of the group, the Daphne Extra special video that had been made for them on request. So they're showing now they had the ability to pool their financial resources. They had connectivity with a webmaster who had access to children, and they can have children abused in any way that they particularly want the child done. The videos depicted a young female blonde child straddling an adult male performing oral sex on the young child. The second video had the two girls together, and with a cheap drop sheet in the background as well, and it had an audio file running through the video as well. So apart from the cheap disco music, you can pick up that there's a very European dialect there, alien to my ears certainly at the time. But by monitoring what this group said about the video, we were picking up other clues. They talked about YVM, the young video models, and that she speaks Dutch Flemish. Thank you guys, we appreciated that. We found the YVM website, we fully downloaded that and The other thing that was quite critical was this particular passage of text. So here they're hypothesising about the fact that young video models will get shot down by the authorities, they'll follow the money trail, go after the paying customers. Yeah, that's exactly what we will do. But put all that aside, here's what I want to happen in the next video. So if you'd just like to read this passage in this box here, that particular passage of text is what see that, sorry. So presenting that passage of text to a grandfather in the context that if we do not do something, this is going to happen, allowed us to deploy our COVID operative to Washington DC for 18 months so we could keep the operation going. With respect to the videos though, this is something you're probably not aware of, is the level of connectivity that we have. And we have now for 10 years had the level of connectivity where I can get a case anywhere in the world. With Anders Persson from Interpol, he's back in Sweden now, but he was based with the Interpol Specialist Group on Crimes Against Children. Case went straight to him. He set up a workspace in the cloud, if you like, where we had real-time communications. So you can see he brought in Austria, Germany, the Netherlands, the posts from the individual members and also the entire Young Video Models website. And then we started running the case 24/7 in cyberspace. So you can see here we've got a message board. You can see I'm actually online in the workspace. These guys are offline because of the time zone difference. These guys have got their computers off. And you could just come in each morning and exchange communications. So ultimately the Belgian guys came back and said it's Dutch specifically from Belgium, which is consistent with what the offender said, Flemish. We picked up text communications from the offenders saying that the child, Daphne, had previously been interviewed by Dutch police for her role in modelling. Thank you for that, because if we go and research back into the late 90s, there was a number of major international operations that went down at that point in time. One of those operations involved Daphne. 21st of July, so only a couple of weeks after the video was released, it's now out on peer-to-peer, which is contrary to what the group's rules were. So you can still download this video from the peer-to-peer network. It's still out there circulating the globe. Caused a lot of grief amongst the members of the group for a lot of reasons. They'd paid for it. Who released it? And it's only going to bring grief on Daphne and Irina and the whole group. But they did give us a few clues here. That's the name of the video, New Young Video Models. Sergio has found the person responsible for the fiasco. So they've given us an investigative clue there in terms of who Sergio actually is. And the investigation is now running in the background to find the girl with all of the information we've got. This is not rocket science for us now. Pretty easy to find her. Now, on the day that this message was posted, where they're talking about law enforcement are inundated, the problem is just too big. We sift through thousands of posts to find anything new. Never underestimate the enemy, but perhaps we're guilty of overestimating them because poised outside the offender's address to execute a search warrant. So that was kind of one of those moments where you go, yep, you just keep thinking whatever you want to think. So if you've been to Bruges, there was a movie about it. It's a beautiful city. Pascal Taverna, the father of the two children that featured in the video, was arrested. After interrogation, he provided information about where the videos were produced, which was in a backpacker kind of hostel. These are crime scene photos from the Belgian authorities. And the other thing that Pascal gave up was Sergio, the owner of the Young Video Models website, and that information was relayed to the Italian authorities. Now these were open source images, just not the way generally that we do business, but you can see here that there's what was 100,000 euro in speaker boxes, which became 70,000 euro in speaker boxes. He was not put in a cell, he was put in an apartment where he had access to computers, hence 30,000 euro went missing. His film production outfits that people sent in for the children to wear in the videos, a love message from the children to Sergio. And ultimately for what he did, he received 10 years. Now he travelled all over Europe filming children. And he got a 10-year sentence for that. And Pascal Taverna, for what he did, also received 10 years. Now, there's a question about what about the rest. These are some of the kids that weren't found, but in every single instance, they were taken to Sergio by the parents. The parents actually willingly took their children to Sergio to have films made. Very difficult problem for us to combat when parents, the ones that are tasked with guarding the safety of these kids, are willingly bringing them to a child sex offender. And you take down one website and they are like weeds. That's the original links from the Young Video Models website. Click on those links and the amount of commercial child exploitation material still out there is significant. So the group earlier on mentioned the topic of that we'd chase the consumers. Yeah, too right, we would. Just like we did in Europol took on the task of Operation Koala, which was the joint international operation to take down every single person that paid for any of the videos that were produced by Sergio Marzola.
18 months on, it seemed fitting the final act of this vile investigation would take place not far from where it kicked off, inside Queensland Police Headquarters.
At the moment, I don't have anything really to say.
This 33-year-old, one of 9 Queenslanders arrested as part of an international sting, which came about when Task Force Argos detectives found a sexually explicit video on the internet featuring 2 girls from Belgium.
That video was then forwarded to Interpol and to our European counterparts.
It turned out that a 35-year-old man was
seizing hundreds of dresses and thousands of euros thought to be proceeds from his made-to-order videos.
We have found pictures of the models in which the model is holding a piece of paper with the name of the customer, a personal trophy.
The filmmaker's emails led police to 92 of those customers across Europe.
Codenamed Koala in recognition of the good work of our detectives, the investigation is far from over, with police still tracking up to 1,000 suspects in the US.
In the end, though, the success of the operation doesn't necessarily equate to the number of arrests.
The authorities were able to remove 23 children from harm. And here in Queensland, as of last week, we were able to stop the sexual abuse of a 4-year-old child.
The girl's 47-year-old grandfather from Kalanga will appear in court next month. Neil Dawley, National 9 News.
Part of the, I'll just interject there, and part of the mantra of our unit is not so much worrying about the fact that these people have got charging them with possession of child exploitation material. Our attitude around that is that that is our search warrant. That's the grounds for our search warrant. It gives us lawful access to their house to find out what they've done in the real world. So I'm sure you will all have an opinion about viewing child abuse material. My personal view is, if that's what you use to gain sexual arousal and masturbation, then you are a risk to the community, and if you haven't hurt a child, you will. That's the way that I have to deal with it, because in most of the cases, we're finding that they are hands-on contact offenders. I don't think it's rocket science to think that, if you are aroused by looking at images of children being abused, that you could potentially hurt a child. So let's just look at what the media watched from the offenders. Everything that broke from Operation Koala was fed back into the group. So we're back into Achilles now. This is of interest probably to you, their view of us and what happened. 92 arrested, 9 held, teachers, doctors, lawyers, computer experts. Yes, folks, pedos live among you. There ain't shit you can do about it. Arrest us all and you'll be illiterate, sick, defenceless and unable to access the internet. This is interesting. The rape to Belgium mention that, of course, because that's important. And if you Google Daphne and Irina right now, which I encourage you not to do, you'll get hits on the internet. So this happened many years ago, but there are still bulletin boards circulating with comments and posts about these kids. This is in 2012. Like the way she bounces her cute bottom. These kids will be on the internet until they die. It's just the way it is. And that's the way with most of our cases, as these images continue to circulate the globe. All right, that little segue resulted in an undercover operative going into Innocent Images Task Force with the FBI, where he worked for nearly 2 years. He was the right guy to send because he was single. He didn't come back single. He came back with an FBI agent as a wife. I guess these things happen. We set up a workspace similar to the one that you saw before, specifically for Operation Achilles, and in there was everything. We had Interpol, Germany, CEOP, Paul Griffiths, intelligence analysts, and we ran the operation 24/7 in cyberspace. Over 500,000 lines of communication were analysed, and in those 500,000 lines of communication there were mistakes that were made. And we took a variety of strategies, which was that we created a fictitious newspaper article, and with our local newspaper we embedded, had a portion of their HTML code that was embedded and hidden from the public, but we fed the group. Those that did it outside of their protection, we captured their IPs. So you've just got to try to level the playing field with these guys a little bit. The federal subpoenas were hit on the proxies and anonymising services as well, and then we move into operational closure. So this was done globally at the same time, simultaneously. We had 2 offenders in Australia. One was an Australian postal worker in northeast Queensland, and we ranked him as the number 3 in the network, married with 2 sons. Maintained the methodology in terms of protecting himself with his computer and utilising encryption. The second one, you'll see that we did him on the 1st of March, okay? So 29th of February, we did the global takedown, and a couple of days later, we took out the Victorian offender. And the reason we did that was we actually arrested him during Operation Koala. He was a low-level member of the network, but we wanted to make sure that we had an operating system that we could get across to Washington to the FBI CART teams to start working on. So he was arrested effectively way before the operational closure. He was arrested the year before this happened, and that hard drive was with Washington for several months. The Queensland offender was prosecuted under the Commonwealth legislation and received the highest Commonwealth sentence to date of 6 years. The Victorian was prosecuted under state legislation at their discretion. That's what they chose to do, and he got an 18-month suspended sentence. United States, the operation was run by Arnold Bell from Innocent Images. He's retired now, but we're still good friends. That's where the targets were, right across the United States of America for simultaneous takedown. They took federal agents and CERT teams into Washington for 2 weeks before the operation to brief them and train them. Every target had snipers on the door, and you just remember what we're dealing with in the United States with their gun laws. And simultaneous takedown of all of the US offenders that were identified. In a shopping centre, you'd be concerned. Some you just wouldn't. It's just the way it is, as you know. Okay, just about that prosecution and what they did. This is the first time it's ever been done in the United States, and it's been used successfully since then. So the child exploitation enterprise, which we now have Commonwealth legislation that's modelled on it, effectively needs a series of violations with 3 or more people, more than 1 victim, and they're doing it in concert, okay? And there's your mandatory minimum. That's got some teeth. So you've just got to meet those thresholds to make sure that you can use it. So 5 pled guilty before trial, 9 opted for trial, and 2 more pleaded just before. They were all put in the same cell complex. All of their communications were monitored. They were put in with undercover operatives to talk about all the kind of methodology that we normally use. And trial result, jury was out for 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. 14 US offenders, 325 years, 7 life sentences, and 3.2 million restitution to victims. And the judge found it the most, they use that word a lot, egregious case before the court in living memory. Well, until she sees the one that we're working on at the moment. All right, so a little segue now. This is onto victim identification. And this is what we were really about. The Tara series we became aware of 2 years before we somebody in this network. Ultimately, as we monitored this child, we had, in terms of pictures, 731 megabytes, and we had 424 megabytes of video, which is not a lot by our standards today. We've set up, once again, a workspace in cyberspace to run the operation on Tara. And in there we had, once again, Interpol, the FBI, Paul from CEOP, We had the Toronto police in there because they're very good with some of the image analysis tools. So you can see here we've got Tara 5, Tara 7, Tara 8. We're watching this kid grow up during this operation while we're trying to find her. So in terms of image analysis, what you're seeing here are some of the things that we found in the actual pictures from Tara. Nail polish, donut bag. So for example, here we've got the vehicle. We managed to identify the actual make and model of the vehicle. In this particular image, you can see that it's got a partial distracted here because the posts seem to always come out at the same time as the US school holidays, and a lot of the scenes seem to be in hotel or motel rooms. So we kind of got a bit of a red herring there in terms of maybe it's a father who's got part-time access. We're hypothesising about all of that, but you can't do much with images like that in terms of trying to locate the hotel or motel. So we had to undergo a process just using Photoshop where we could strip the kid out of the actual pictures so that we could start disseminating them across hotel chains to see is that the kind of furniture or bedspreads that you use. He used Photoshop to mask himself out in every single picture, and he usually masked out a lot of material as well. Centre for Missing Kids also did a part composite of his face for us to work with. And altogether what we ended up with in terms of clues for her were, in the video we had a native Georgian accent, vegetation, Mardi Gras masks on a wall, which you'll see in a minute. He had a permanent tan line on his arms, and the donut box and the zip code. So if you look at the zip code clue, Jonesboro is where that resolves to. On the right track anyway, even just with the postcode clue. But what we still reached a dead end, so we communicated with the FBI and they sent a special agent over to work with us for 6 weeks, Heidi Estrada from Texas. She took everything and she went back to the United States of America, put together this flyer that was circulated amongst law enforcement only, and out of that it gathered a little bit of interest from a team just south of the Canadian border. The particular image that they had a lot of interest in was this one, where there's a specific birthday flyer on the wall. That sparked their interest to the point that this case really got some momentum in the US. Now, I'll just pause that. The operation closed tactically in February and we hadn't found her, okay? And we just had nowhere to go with it. So, and there was a second child that we hadn't found as well. So when we made the call strategically we have to close the operation now, we're pretty much leaving her behind. It was a really, really difficult decision for us to make, but because the only ultimately found on June the 9th, so several months later, and she was raped the night before the FBI went through the door.
People who know James Husky can't believe the horrendous charges against him.
He's in here 2 or 3 times a day, you know, and he talks about his kids that he teaches. He's good with them, and I just can't see him doing something like that.
Well, prosecutors say the Lafayette, Georgia man has admitted to one of the most shocking sexual abuse cases they have ever seen. Videotaped rapes of a young girl, which were then shared in an international child porn club. The news was even a shock to his family.
You know, for the surprise of it and not having any idea anything like that was going on.
Now, WDF News Source Bethany Murray joins us now with more on the case against Husky in our top local story.
John, Husky's arrest marks the peak of a 2-year international investigation into a child pornography file-sharing group. His confession to creating and distributing thousands of sexual images of a 9-year-old girl leads investigators to search for other victims. This unassuming brown house on Highway 193 played a part in the series of graphic images that landed 38-year-old James Bart Husky in federal custody.
Child pornography, distributing and uploading child pornography to the internet and distributing it basically all over the world.
Officers arrested Husky at his home early Tuesday morning. He confessed to it all, creating the images, molesting the little girl for nearly 5 years,
and uploading the images of sexual assault to the web.
I'll kill that one there and go on to what the prosecutor has to say about it.
These images in this case are horrific. There's really, and that word doesn't even begin to describe the horror of the images and the traumatic experiences this child went through over a period of years in her life. So this case ranks right up there with the worst I've ever seen in 12 and a half years. So the case started basically in Australia when the images were first country and state line. $1,000 fine total and a possible 70 years in prison, yes. These kinds of defendants to cooperate in the same way that we've been asking drug dealers and other defendants to cooperate for years. The way to catch a predator is by finding another predator first. The board that we submitted into evidence shows that since June, that is when the child and the defendant were identified, just since June of this year, that is the number of times law enforcement has recovered the images that we know as the Terra series. That does not include all the images that were recovered prior to the child's identification. So just since June, there are some 1,000 cases in this country alone with those images. This series has, unfortunately, because of the very violent, graphic nature of the images that are depicted, because there are videos included as well as still images, it is very sought after by people who have the same interest as Mr. Husky. And so we're seeing it in more and more cases, unfortunately. It is going to be distributed throughout the world for many years to come, unfortunately.
What I do know about the particular Tara case, they can't place her. She sexually abuses the other children in any placement that she's gone into. Child sex offenders continue to, because of the way that story was portrayed, they showed the family house. Mail for Tara still gets sent there, sex toys. And child sex offenders continue to pursue her on the internet. Well done, Dad. Great job. Okay, in the United Kingdom, the job was run by CEOP. Very proud to say that that man there now works in my team and has since 2009. He left sunny England for sunny Queensland, and he's the head of our victim identification team. Since he started working there, over 400 children like Tara have been found globally from the work that we do on image and video analysis. We don't talk a lot about that. We don't give away our methodology because it'll stop the next kid being rescued. There was 2 offenders in the United Kingdom, 2 years sentence. Both of them were hands-on abusers. Helen, the number 2 in the group, Yardbirds 2IC, very, very difficult to deal with. 25 years imprisonment, hands-on abuse. Fully encrypted operating system. They did a controlled delivery to the house to get him away from his computer, and at the point of entry, managed to secure a live operating system, which helped us quite significantly. In Germany, it was run by Daniel Zumlis. Once again, this whole issue about, and I'm sure you guys, I've seen your collegiate nature last night, particularly at the dinner as well, but you know, if you have a few drinks with people, you get to know them really well. These guys have all stayed at my house. They're all my friends. I can get a job to Germany at any time when I know it'll be acted on, and likewise from Daniel. They had 4 key targets that they had to take down. Daniel rang me and I just said, how's it going? He said, we are in position, best Arnold Schwarzenegger voice, you know. In a moment his door will not exist. Tragedy. No sincerity in my voice? Right. I'll try harder. Okay, you can play detective for a moment here and I'll play this clip for you. Okay, this is one of the clips that we intercepted during that 6-month period where we were looking at material and trying to get it to countries. So put your, watch what happens. I cut it before anything bad happens, but listen is probably the more important thing, okay?
Yes, hallo?
Du musst den Buchstaben in den Mund nehmen.
Der Angelina. Was?
Okay. Anyone speak German? You understand anything that he said? Okay. Probably the key things that came out of that was Ik bin, I am. Okay, and she said her name, which was very important. In the background of another clip is a radio station called Hit Radio, which is very specific to a region in Germany. Okay. So clearly German, we got it to Germany. Daniel immediately started working on the case and he typed the little girl's name into Google because it was a very unusual name. And that brought up the family webpage. Just sometimes you get a break. Kids' full names, their dates of births, parents' full names, who is registrant check on the domain name, gave an address, search warrant executed. Within 36 hours, dad is in custody and gets 10 years. And that's how fast it can work across borders now, working with people that you know and you trust. So all up from a group that we didn't think we'd get any. Most significantly was the girls like Delia, Angelina and Tara that we picked up along the way. Out of Operation Koala, that was 2,500 search warrants were generated as a result of that. 20 plus children in the Ukraine were identified from the modelling work. And analyst's notebook chart of the hierarchical structure of a child sex offender network. Never let anybody tell you that they are not hierarchical in structure. They have positions, they have authority, they have roles, and they are trying to climb up the ladder in that network. We know this for a fact. Research project in terms of how a network actually runs. It's a business. It's really quite fascinating. And you'll get higher up in the structure of the network if you're a hands-on abuser and you're providing material at the request of the rest of the group. That's the original chart that I showed you. Everything green is in jail. Everything in yellow went to a country where we didn't have that level of connectivity or they didn't have the legislation to act on it. So for a group that thought they were pretty good, they got destroyed, except for Yardbird, who is still out there. But we're looking and we're close. We know he's somewhere near Texas. So I've brought you in right on time, I think, with time for questions and then lunch. Yes?
Having your own systems on the web, obviously got some very strong protection systems to prevent people being hacked.
Oh yeah, completely. We're standalone completely. We test our infrastructure, or the job we're running at the moment, we reroute and get other countries to test our infrastructure for vulnerabilities. So right now, if you tried to get us, you'd find us in Germany. And you won't get through.
And the other part of this is, a lot of these people seem to be father and child. Is there anything from the stolen, the kids that are actually stolen through Europe, like Alana, Madeline and so on?
Look, out of the cases that we've seen specifically, video that we intercepted that weren't, I guess, either hands-on abuser produced, or from somebody who they knew. So in that case, Husky wasn't a member of the group, but he knew a member of the group, so he was providing it to him. Or it was commercial exploitation, as in the Young Video Models website. Oh, look, it is. But I get really into what we call hurtcore, which is really violent rape of children. That one image you saw with the knife was nothing compared to what happened to Tara. So if it didn't pique their interest, they didn't care, they didn't want it. But other groups are far more generic. I mean, we're picking up a lot of Indigenous abuse in our cases, which goes on our database. So.
My reading of the literature suggests that while the literature doesn't suggest that many guys go on from watching or looking at CEM to contact offending, the literature is a little bit weak on that perhaps. It's shown, according to one of my former graduate students, that quite a number of guys who do CEM have actually done contact offending already.
Yeah.
So perhaps, the going backwards from contact CEM users to what have they done before, and leads that might connect to past victims, local victims. I'm sure you're looking at that already.
You raise a really good point, and one of the things that was on that bio that was read out was the commencement of the National Victim Image Database in 2005. Now, the reason that I stood up in front of the commissioners and said we have to have this, 8. We found 8. Guess where we found them? Queensland. Queensland did not have the most number of targets. Geographically, it was New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland. What that should tell you is that they weren't looking. They just didn't look for contact abuse. And when we did review a case from Western Australia, we found an offender that was incarcerated because of his purchase of the material. But when we analysed his hard drive, we found high-definition video of him stupefying 2 children and raping them. And he was a serving police officer. They just didn't look. And the problem for us is that we need technology to help our law enforcement agents, because our seizures are in the millions. You can't do this without technology, and the technology exists. And I'm standing here 9 years later after commencing that project and still fighting at a federal level to make sure that this happens.
My second question is perhaps naive, because I don't know technology very well, but why can't the stuff be taken off the internet once you've located it?
It can.
Sorry.
It can.
Yeah?
It can. Look, are you familiar with peer-to-peer technology? File sharing? You know, getting the...
Yeah.
Okay, that's peer-to-peer. That's peer-to-peer, okay? So they've got the will and the capability to stop piracy. I won't get technical on you, but every image, every video, every file has got a fingerprint. It's a hashtag. You can break it down into a hexadecimal string that is unique to it. And you can stop the movement of that across the internet if you want to. But all I see is obstacles continually put up in our way about freedom of information and privacy. But really the only compelling argument that gets put forward is from industries that are losing money. You could stop Tara from being disseminated across the world. We can track on peer-to-peer, and maybe if I see you in a couple of years' time, I'll show you what's going on in the peer-to-peer environment. But we can track the movement of child exploitation material across Australia, and the number of people that are doing it is just terrifying. We can stop that, we can track it, so it's capable, but we just need a will.
Hi, John. Can you tell me a little bit about the self-care of yourself and your staff, and perhaps from meeting people? What's your turnover like?
I'm not going to say you're alluding that I'm a basket case or something, maybe, right? Okay. Look, I've been doing it for I've been doing specifically this for 14 years. You can't get into the unit and you can't get out of the unit without psychometric testing, okay? And we are tested every 3 to 6 months depending on what we're doing within the unit. That's all great, that's wonderful, that's corporate self-care, okay? A lot of it comes down to us as managers watching our people and knowing them and just being aware of, I exercise every day, I eat healthily, I put a wig on and spandex and I play in an 80s band, which I won't show you any pictures from. And you've just got to have a balanced life and recognise that what we're dealing with here is a criminal offence. And if you look at it that way and you look at it along the lines of just get rid of what's going on and find the clues to help find the child and move on, that works really well. About the horror of what we do, and yes, it is nasty. Audio is really difficult, but I think you find that there's 4 guys in my unit that have been there as long as I have. Paul Griffiths has been working in the crime type since 1996. You won't find a more stable human being. It's not for everybody, and you've just got to make sure that people know that the door is open. It's not detrimental to leave. Stick your hand up, talk to us, keep the door open, and just good management practice is all that's really required. The psychometric testing and screening processes that are put in, that's certainly important, I think. But that's going to come down to the skill of the person that's actually doing the assessment for a start, and they rotate quite regularly. And as I said, it's probably a corporate tick in the box that you're looking after your people. It really comes down to us. Now, we've lost 1 guy in the time I've been there on medical grounds, and the interesting fact about, and you can draw your own conclusions from this, but the day his wife left him, and he lost $980,000 on the stock market. But he put in a writ against the Queensland Police Service for his work in child exploitation material. No, might have been the straw that broke the camel's back, I don't know, but we haven't had another case in the time that I've been there. And that's recruitment, retention, looking after your people. It's pretty much what it comes down to, and knowing that the work they're doing is important and is valued. What they don't concern themselves with is sentences, because if we did that, we'd do our heads in. Right, now that I've suitably depressed you all, enjoy your lunch. Thank you very much.